Hello, I'm Sister Tandy. If the words Occupational Health and Safety Act make you feel like you need a lawyer in the room, you are not alone. Most employers find legislation complex, time-consuming, and frankly, a bit frightening. But here is the truth. The OHS Act exists to protect people and your workers. When it protects them well, it protects your business too. Today we are breaking down South Africa's primary workplace health and safety law into plain language, no legal jargon, no intimidation. Just what you need to know and what you need to do. Let's begin. The Occupational Health and Safety Act 85 of 1993 is the primary legislation governing workplace health and safety in South Africa. It applies to virtually every employer in the country, from a two-person accounting firm to a mine with 10,000 workers. If you employ people, this act applies to you. The only workplaces specifically excluded are mines, which are governed by the Mine Health and Safety Act 29 of 1996, and certain farming activities. Every other industry, from construction and manufacturing to retail, food service, transport, and professional services, falls under the OHS Act. The Act defines the duties of employers, employees, and self-employed persons, and it establishes the Department of Employment and Labor as the enforcement body with the authority to inspect, fine, and prosecute. The first obligation under the OHS Act: every employer with more than 5 workers must have a written health and safety policy. This policy must state your commitment to workplace health and safety. Identify who is responsible for what. Outline the procedures for identifying and controlling hazards, and explain how incidents will be reported and investigated. The policy must be reviewed annually, or whenever there is a significant change in the workplace. It must be communicated to every employee, not filed in a drawer. It must be visibly displayed. Inspectors look for this document immediately. If you cannot produce a current, signed health and safety policy on request, you are already non-compliant before the inspection has begun. The second obligation: conduct regular risk assessments. The OHS Act requires you to identify all hazards in the workplace, evaluate the risk each presents, implement controls to eliminate or reduce that risk, and document the entire process. Risk assessments are not once-off events. They must be repeated when new equipment is introduced, when processes change, after any incident, and at regular intervals determined by the nature of your industry. The hierarchy of controls defines how you address risks. First, eliminate the hazard entirely. If that is not possible, substitute it with something safer. Then engineer controls, barriers, ventilation, guarding. Then administrative controls, procedures, training, rotation. And last, where all else is insufficient, personal protective equipment. PPE is the last line of defense, not the first. The third obligation: provide adequate health and safety training. Every employee must receive training appropriate to their role and the hazards they face. Induction training for new starters. Task-specific training before any hazardous work. Refresher training at intervals determined by risk level. Supervisory training for anyone responsible for others' safety. All training must be documented. Who was trained, by whom, what was covered, when, and the outcome of any competency assessment. An untrained worker is a liability to themselves, to their colleagues, and to your business. The Act places a specific duty on employers not to allow untrained persons to perform work that creates a risk. If a worker is injured while doing a task they were never trained for, the employer's liability is significant. The fourth obligation: implement medical surveillance programs for workers exposed to occupational health hazards. If your workers are exposed to noise above the regulated action level, dust, chemicals, vibration, heat stress, biological agents, or other listed hazards, you are legally required to conduct occupational health examinations. These include pre-employment medicals to establish a baseline, periodic examinations, annually or biannually depending on the hazard, to detect early signs of occupational disease, and exit medicals when employment ends, to document any work-related health changes. CareNet Consultants specializes in exactly these examinations. We ensure compliance with the applicable regulations, including the noise-induced hearing loss regulations and the hazardous chemical substances regulations, while delivering care that respects your workers' dignity. Obligations 5 and 6 work together. Maintain records and report incidents. All records relating to risk assessments, training, medical surveillance, inspections, and incidents must be kept for a minimum of 3 years. For occupational diseases identified through medical surveillance, such as noise-induced hearing loss or occupational asthma, records must be retained for 30 years. During a Department of Labor inspection, an inspector can request any of these records. If they cannot be produced, it is treated as evidence of non-compliance, regardless of whether the underlying actions were taken. On reporting, certain incidents must be reported to the Department of Labor within prescribed timeframes. Fatalities and serious injuries must be reported within 7 days using the prescribed Annexure 1 form. Certain occupational diseases must be reported under the Compensation for Occupational Injuries and Diseases Act. Department of Labor inspectors have significant powers under the OHS Act. They may enter any workplace without notice, inspect any area, examine any record, and interview any person. They can issue compliance orders, improvement notices, and prohibition notices, which can immediately shut down an operation. They can recommend prosecution. So what do they look for first? A valid, current health and safety policy, posted on the wall, not filed away. A health and safety representative, appointed in writing, for every workplace with more than 20 workers. A functioning health and safety committee. Risk assessments that are current and specific to the actual hazards on site. Training records that match the workforce. Medical surveillance records for hazard-exposed workers. And in industrial environments, properly maintained equipment, correct PPE usage, and visible hazard controls. CareNet Consultants addresses 4 of your 6 OHS Act obligations directly. On medical surveillance, we design and implement programs specific to your industry's hazard profile, conduct all required examinations, and deliver legally compliant certificates of fitness. On record keeping, My Clinic Online maintains your medical surveillance records digitally, with the 40-year retention capability required by legislation. On risk assessment support, our occupational health practitioners work with you to identify health-related risk factors that should inform your risk assessment process. On training, we provide occupational health training for your health and safety representatives, committee members, and supervisory personnel. You manage the policy and incident reporting. We manage the clinical program. Together, you are compliant, fully and documentably. Before you go, here is something every business leader should know. Research by the International Labour Organization found that workplace injuries and occupational diseases cost the global economy over 4% of GDP annually, and that organizations with mature safety management systems consistently outperform their industry peers on profitability by statistically significant margins. Compliance is not overhead, it is a competitive advantage. From all of us at CareNet Consultants, your best is good enough for today. See you in the next video. CareNet Consultants, your partner in workplace health.